Hi, and welcome back. I'm Dr. Marilyn Carroll, and I'm your host for Managing Project Teams. And so I'm going to share my monitor with you now, and we are going to really get started on our discussion of Chapter 3, Managing Project Teams. So let's move forward to the viewer perspective of slideshow. So, managing project teams, chapter 3. Remember that we're coming to you from the book by Leigh Thompson, Pearson, Making the Team a Guide to Management. It's the 6th edition of this book. And I did 6th edition, things haven't changed that much. Where there have been changes, I will communicate those changes with you. All right? Does that sound like a plan? Great. So let's get started. So, building that team, leadership versus management. This seems to be something that really confuses a lot of people. I remember studying my PhD and we were going over this leadership versus management. And Leah is right on target here when she talks about leadership. A relationship is not the same as a management, which is a function. One is a relationship. And if we can get this, because I love this definition that she carves out. It's not the same as management, a function. Managing, I'm on a function, but leadership is about building relationship, influencing people, and making things happen. So the leader of a team has a point of view that allows them to see what needs to be done, understands the underlying focus that are working in the organization, and initiate action to make things happen better. They're not politicking for themselves, they're politicking for the team. Once you become a leader, you have to think of the whole instead of just yourself. So if people can remember that about leadership, I think we'd do a lot better in the leadership positions that we have out there, all right? So let's look a little forward and take a little bit dive. Management versus leadership. The management is a function. Leadership is a relationship. Management does planning, budgeting, evaluating, and facilitating. Whereas a leader, the relationship person, is selecting talent, motivating, coaching, and building trust. Very important, the difference between the two. One is a function and one is building relationships. So the leader's point of view, the follower examples of what the person would say. What do you want to do? The follower also, will you give me more authority? I need you to clear the obstacles for me. That's what the follower would say to the leader. The bureaucrat, this is not my job. I'll pass that on to so-and-so. Our procedures don't allow that. We'll never done that way before. This hasn't been approved. I can't do that without my supervisor's permission. You see what's going on here, leader versus management? Then we have the administrators. What did they do last? We're never done it that way. Let's see what the rule is for that. Let's see what's going on. The contrarian, oh my gosh, this is good. That will never work for us. We tried that before. I just don't know. That's a terrible idea. You won't be able to fund it. You just won't be able to fund it. You'll never be able to do that on time. Let's see. And then the leader. Do you see what needs to be done? Do you understand the underlying forces at play here? Are you willing to initiate that action to make things better? Do you see? Yes, my tone changes, but so does the tone in the way the various different people, from the follower, the bureaucrat, the administrator, the contrarian, and the leader. So on the leadership paradox, I remember studying this, the presence of the leader does not always ensure that teams will be effective. It may even hinder a team's anonymity. Few people understand how to transform into leaders, and that is so very true. That is a huge challenge here with this. And then the question of how one leads others who are supposed to lead themselves is the essence of the team paradox, encountered by leaders of self-managing and self-directing teams. So leaders and the nature-nurture debate, entity theory versus incremental theory, trait theories of leadership. So there's the leadership theory that argues that leaders are born and not made. I remember going through this and I had to answer this long, arduous questions about, are leaders born or are they made? Well, one can argue that leadership is largely an inborn characteristic of a person. It is not something that can easily be developed or learned. We can argue from that perspective. As a matter of fact, I've never worked at a company or institution where at some point in time I didn't have some type of leadership position. But I believe for me that was part of my DNA, that I had something in me that could naturally lead, but it didn't mean that I knew how to lead properly. As a matter of fact, I went through school, studied leadership, and I went all the way up to the highest level of education you could possibly obtain in order to understand leadership and the functions and how one must react to it. So different trait theories focus on different aspects of the person to discern leadership traits. There's intelligence, there's personality, there's birth order, and there's gender. I am the firstborn in my family. I'm the female. My intellectual level is quite high because I've worked on it, maybe because I was naturally born with some things, but I do have a personality. Incremental theories of leadership is evidence that suggests that environmental and situational factors strongly affect leadership more than a person's personality. And I agree with that, but the personality is innate. And usually we're going to resort back to that personality we have. That's why knowledge of ourselves is extremely important. Fundamental attribution error says that the tendency to overemphasize the impact of stable dispositional traits and underemphasize the impact of situations on a person's behavior is the fundamental attribution error. And we don't, traits do matter. A situation a person is in does matter as well. So incremental theories of leadership focus on how leaders do two things in relation to teamwork. They focus on how leaders directly interact with their teams and how leaders structure the external environment so that the team can achieve their necessary goals. Seemingly trivial situational factors such as seating arrangements can affect the emergence of leadership in groups. And that is so important. Where I am, where I sit, where I need to be, what's going on, that can really hinder because people are individuals and their personality does matter. And they bring that to the table. It's a lot involved in leading people and understanding people, understanding personalities, understanding styles, understanding where people are. Having relationships with people is extremely important. Not that those relationships have to be unprofessional, but having a professional relationship where you understand those you're leading. So evidence indicates that teams with randomly selected leaders perform better on all decision-making tasks than teams whose leaders are systematically selected. So if I just select somebody to lead, that may be better than saying it comes to a system. That could be because it's harder for people sometimes to believe that that person that's been working with us all this time is going to be the better leader when I may know some things that the management don't know. So I'm putting emotions into things, I'm putting personality into it. And that may not be the case necessarily that one needs to take. Remember, we need to make decisions on information that we have, not on our perceived ideas or suggestions or thoughts. A task-oriented leader focuses on accomplishing objectives of the team, whereas a person-focused leader focuses on the process of getting their team to their shared goal or objective. Which one do you think is best? A task-oriented leader or a person-focused leader? Well, let's see. I'm more on the person-focused leader. We got the country club style manager, we got the team manager, we got the authority obedience manager, and the impoverished manager. We can see the country club manager is high people, low task. Team manager is high people, high task. The impoverished manager is low people, low task, and the authority obedience manager is low people, high task. So authority people, I have authority, they're going to be high on task and low on how they treat people. And this is where we have a lot of problems. The country club manager, high on people, low task, really not getting anything done, just talking a lot of and keeping people happy, talking, speaking, I'm starting to say another word, but we'll stick with the content here. Um, they need to focus on what's at hand. And like the team manager is high people, high team. That's ultimately where we want to be, or somewhere in the middle of the road, focus on work output as well as people morale. Okay. Now, transactional versus transformational leader. Now, a transformational leader is more that senior leader that you see versus a transaction person is more transactional in nature. But transformational leadership is motivates the teams to work up towards goals that go beyond self-interest for the good of the team, the organization, or society. Where and also they work with their team or lead their team. Um, the leader and their team, excuse me, are in a psychological contract that involves mutual obligations to each other and regular negotiations to see established outcomes and rewards. In This brings me to why I put leadership and psychological capital together to test as part of my dissertation and getting my PhD to see, it is emotional based on the situation at hand at that time as a psychological capital, positive psychological capital, more important to those who follow a leader style, a positive leader. And so that was interesting in that particular setting to see what the outcomes were. And then we have transactional leadership. These leaders power and forces team members successful completion of tasks, and leaders and their teams are in exchange or in an exchange relationship that involves negotiation to establish outcomes and rewards. And this type of leadership sets up a competitive relationship between the leader and employee, the transactional leader. And I think we'll find that many organizations have this transactional leadership happening, and we see a lot of competition between the relationship with the leader and the employee. And that can cause a lot of problems. Advantages of transformational leadership: they motivate their teams to do more than they originally expected to do as they strive for higher order outcomes. They have higher teamwork quality and more inter-team collaboration. They rely on three behaviors to produce change: charisma, intellectual stimulation, and an individualized consideration. And they have more satisfied subordinates. And I truly agree with this. And I am a subscriber of transformational leadership. The disadvantages of transformational leadership include they can have a positive impact on a team innovation, but a negative impact on individual motivation. Um, hypocrisy attribution dynamics, the tendency for the team members to draw sinister conclusions about a leader's behavior. So those are some negatives. So the dark side of transformational leadership. I love this in studying for my dissertation, my PhD. I studied the dark side of leadership, period. But the dark side of transformational leaders is the People's Temple was a cult-like organization based in San Francisco that primarily attracted poor residents. In 1977, the Reverend Jim Jones, who was the group's political, social, and spiritual leader, moved the group with him to Jonestown, a jungle settlement in Guyana, South America, excuse me, in November 1978. And if any of you remember this, it was something, a whole process. He was a transformational leader. And we can see now, you may be thinking of some other people who have the dark side leadership traits. They may be transformational leaders. I call some of them disruptive leaders. Some are good, some are bad, but there are problems associated with every leadership style. There's always balance that's needed. And so autocratic versus democratic leadership. Autocratic leadership, also known as vertical leadership, is the type of leadership that stems from appointed or formal leader of a team, displayed by leaders who seek sole possession of authority, power, and control. These autocratic leaders, many times, guys, there are problems with them. And there's a need for autocratic leaders when we have situations around processes that need to be handled like an assembly process. But autocratic leaders in a professional environment, we have found to be not the best situation. Democratic leadership, and that's shared leadership is a group process in which leadership is distributed among and stems from team members. That's democratic leadership. So we all get to play a role. It's displayed by leaders who share authority, power, and control with their team. Now, there's research evidence that has shown that shared leadership over time significantly predicts team effectiveness because everybody is taking a stake in and we're all in this together. And therefore, the leadership is all of our responsibilities at various times. I just need to know when my turn is on this leadership. So there's representative behavior of 5 types of leaders. There's the assertive leadership who's engaging in intimidation and dispensing reprimands. This is a bad, aversive leadership. Engaging in intimidation and dispensing reprimands. That's not the right type of leadership. And then there's directive leadership, a person who issues instructions and commands and assigning goals. And then we have transactional leadership, which is providing personal rewards, providing material rewards, managing by exception, active, and managing by exception, passive. So both ways. Now, transformational leadership, back on that, we have providing vision, expressing idealism, using inspirational communication, and having high performance expectations. I am, like I said, I believe in transformational leadership. I'm more like that. But in any kind of leadership situation, you must have a balance, okay? Empowering leadership is engaging or encouraging an independent action, encouraging opportunity for thinking, encouraging teamwork, encouraging self-development, participant goal setting, and encouraging self-reward. Empowering leadership is a very positive leadership, and I think we see more transformational leaders doing the empowering leadership types. Leader model leadership. Leaders transmit their own moods to teams members. Yes, it's a trickle-down effect. And remember, as I stated in our first chapter, some leaders, people, it's like parenting. And not to say that my team members or workers or people who work on my team are kids, they just, certain behaviors are learned behaviors. And the mood of a leader impacts the mood of the team. Leader team perceptual distance, the difference between is the difference between a leader and their team and how they perceive the situation. Now, as we go on, the expectations of the leader include the leadership categorization theory, which argues that people use the mental image of an ideal leader as an implicit benchmark to determine their receptibility towards an actual leader. And that's why we have a lot of studying that goes on in school to help us to see things and to help us to understand that perception gets all of us in trouble, or perceived thoughts gets a lot of us in trouble. You need to have information, have the right information. And that's why we say when you're writing in school, you need to understand what is it? Do some research. What does others say? I'm always researching. I never think I'm the total authority on anything without going forward and researching what does others say and how does that come out? And what's the foundation of this action that I need to make? Let me find out more detail. So, and police leadership theories include preconceived ideas, evaluate whether a leader is worthy of influence, and specify what teams expect of their leaders. Expected characteristics, guys, and behaviors of elected leaders versus appointed leaders. We see that over and over again. And here's a graph of expectations of leaders. Determine whether people accord influence to a leader. Authoritative, we have appearance. Yes, I remember studying all of these, and we talked about a lot about knowledgeable, authoritative. Are they responsible? Are they well-spoken? Are they independent? Are they influential? Are they determined? Are they risk takers, aggressive, or in command? Or appearance, tall, clean cut? looking good, believe it or not, matters, especially for political office. Kindness, open to others' ideas, respect for the team, friendly, caring, honest, enthusiastic, sense of humor, and popular. These are characteristics that people like to follow. And examples of elected leaders are presidents of the United States, members of Congress, mayors, and governors. Now, characteristics of skills expected of appointed leaders include knowledgeable, responsible, well-spoken, active, determined, influential, aggressive, in command. So they take charge, systematic, open to others' ideas, respect for the team, friendly, caring, honest, enthusiastic, that sense of humor, popular. And so examples of appointed leaders include leaders of U.S. Armed Forces, Supreme Court justices, and president cabinet members. So the members of the president cabinet. These are individuals that exemplify characteristics of skills expected of them when these individuals are being elected. And you may think of others who are fit some of these descriptions and why. And when you think of that, you would look at the graph again that we just went over, the exhibit 3.6, okay? Phototypically, leaders who are regarded to be the most like team members are evaluated to be the more effective than leaders who are seen as not very similar to their teams. So prototypically, I mean, are you like me, or what's going on? You may not be like me, so I have a challenge with that. Therefore, I'm not going to elect you as a leader. I need somebody like me that understands me and my needs, because I'm just perceiving this from my thought process. Those like me understand me. Those going through the same challenges I have to experience are like me. We see this a lot in leadership. We see this in wage disparity, because a man may think that since I'm in control, I'm in charge, other men have to go through the same thing, not remembering or thinking about a woman that may have that job may be going through those same things as well. So we have to think with regard to information and not perceive. Perception is the devil sometimes. It gets in our way. Status, uncertainty, and leadership expectations. Perceived status of the leader affects teams' preferences regarding leadership style. Again, perception, guys. You want to get rid of that. That perception is horrible. But then again, as leaders, we have to understand that if we don't want perception, we need to provide as much information as possible for people to make informed decisions. All right? Environmental conditions such as change, uncertainty, and risk affect how people perceive leaders. Just a true, and that carries on. And whether the leader is in a home situation, church situation, business situation, factory situation, grocery store, franchise, whatever the case, is the way they remember things. So let's talk about leader-member exchange model. And this is one of the various models that's very popular in leadership and was back in the day that we used this, especially during the days of the 60s, 70s. Focuses on the relationship that leaders develop with particular subordinates, what leaders of subordinates offer and receive in such relationships. So what's the relationship that the leaders develop with particular subordinates? And then what leaders of subordinates offer to receive such relationships? Could be, I hired my friend Jane, and Jane is she's my friend, we have a relationship, and therefore, based on that relationship, I'm going to give her X, and I'm expecting X of her. And it may be different than what you're doing with all the other employees. Or if I bring in somebody, I recommend somebody to work, they get the job, I get my little bonus for that, and then they start working, and I expect some things from them as they rise up the organization. That's the kind of thing, leader-member exchange. So as we go on, there are key personal attributes that influence differential treatment for Pacific employees. And some of the key determinants that lead to close, trusting relationship between leaders and their subordinates are subordinate similarity to the leader, demonstrated competence and version. Advantages of differential treatment include increased team member commitment, organizational commitment to employees increases, improved employee and team performance, and higher job satisfaction. I would have to say that the disadvantages of differential treatment include may cause an in-group among those with whom the leader invests in, what we may call the good old boy network. Leaders may request input from the favorite team members, even if they are not an expert, and can thus cause team members to towards resentment, and diminish group effectiveness by decreasing group advocacy. So I don't know. There's some differences. Now let's talk about leadership and power. Well, power is the ability of a person to control the outcomes of another person's in a relationship. And French and Raven identified 6 key sources of power that people use in organizations and teams. And I'm going to go over that in Exhibit 3.7. And so power distance is the degree in which a person is accepting of unequal distribution of power. So let's talk about sources of power. All right. So legitimate power is based on the person's holding of a formal position. Other person complies because of the belief of legitimacy of power of the power holder. And then there's reward power, and that's based on a person's access to rewards. Other persons complies because of their desire to receive those rewards. And then we have cohesive power, and that's based on a person's ability to punish. Other persons complies because of the fear of punishment. Then we have expert power. Expert power is based on personal expertise in a certain area. Other person complies because of the belief in the power holder's knowledge. I like you because you happen to be the professor. I believe in what you're talking about because you are the professor and you should know. And you should have studied or have the credentials to say what you're saying. That's expert power. Reverent power is based on a person's attractiveness to others. Other person complies because of the respect and liking for the power holder. Reverent power we see with people like the Kardashians, if you like them, they have reverent power. They have power. It's not legitimate power or reward power or expert power, it's reverent power that they have. And because of their attractiveness, the way they look, the way they dress, they have power. Informational power, and that's based on power related to the extent and content of an individual's knowledge base. Informational power is not as rewarded these days as reverent power. And that's a disaster or a disgrace because reverent power, just because somebody's beautiful, doesn't mean that they have the knowledge to tell me what it is I need to be doing. Informational power, that person has a knowledge base that can help me, and we probably should more so listen to what they're saying than that of the reverent power person. Network power, and that's based on breadth and depth of connections the person has in their professional and personal network. So we operate a lot in this day and time on reverent power and network power, when we should be looking at legitimate power as well as informational power. Network power, yes, I may have a network of people I'm associated with, but doesn't mean that network is going to buy or do. Those in the entertainment industry, like the Kardashians or famous movie star, they have both reverent and network power because they have a huge network. Even though they don't associate with the network like that, people love to follow them. So that for their reverent power and the network power works together. So patterns of power. So using power, Wagman and Mannix identify 3 patterns of power used by team members: overuse, abdication, and managing the resources. Effective using power, people with more power than others feel enhanced role identification. They use themselves as a reference point when judging others, are less motivated to scan their environmental or process information. These are some challenges, guys, and you gotta watch it. Discount advice from others due to elevated confidence in their own judgments, and focus more on positive, rewarding information and less on threatening information, thereby increasing their risk tolerance. Participative management is a model of leadership that delegates authority downward towards individuals and groups. It allows leadership to be more equally shared by team members. And it's positively related to knowledge sharing and team efficacy and leads to better team performance, believe it or not, participative management. I participate, I'm going to do, I'm going to be a part, we're going to get this done. I think where we have participative management a lot is when we see great teams. Even though there's a leader, he or she knows how to pull the forces together and get some things done. I think the quarterback, I think of his name right now. I think he practices unknown, but maybe knowingly or unbeknowingly, participant management. He's older. He understands, you know what, I gotta let people know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and especially their strengths. And once they identify their strength, they can participate with me in managing this team to a win. That's what I think is the difference between a great quarterback and one that is mediocre and don't know how to help manage that team or give people kudos. We see the quarterback in many cases as the lead of the team. Continuing of team empowerment, we can see that on the next slide, and slide after that are the 4 factors that can lead to a state of powerlessness. So team empowerment, we have level 1, 20% or organizational impact, entry level sales, call center team, let's see, low or moderate amount of organizational impact include production team, delivery or integrated teams, quality inspectors. Now, moderate amount of organizational impact include faculty design team, we have purchasing team or human resource team. Now, the high amount of organizational impact, we see that with merger and acquisition teams, legal counsel team, and C-suite executive selection committee. That's high amount of organizational impact because they are able to do certain things. So we want to make sure we're looking at this to see where we are on the continuum and understanding where our role fits in and what kind of impact we can have when we're in the organization and how the organization looks at us. All right. So factors that lead to a potential state of powerlessness. You got to look at the context and factors leading to state under the organizational factors. Significant organizational change and transition, startup ventures, excessive competitive pressures, interpersonal bureaucratic climate, poor communication, limited network forming systems, high centralized organizational sources, highly centralized organizational resources. A lot of companies will have things in place. I'm sorry, but the wrong people are too much going on when we need to focus on some things and not all things. You've got to put things in perspective in order for your organization to perform at its maximum level. And we got to know where that is. Just because company X has this group or company Y has another group doesn't mean we need those groups. We need to focus on those things that matter. And one way to really notice this is to know this if there's low participation. There's something wrong. We're not getting that much participation. You shouldn't have to force people to participate. They should want to. Those things that people want to participate in the company, the committees and stuff of that nature, are the things that should tell the organization there's something happening here. There's something going on, and this is what we need to do. We need to, kind of take a deeper dive into this and see where we need to go and how we need to adjust. Supervisory style, authoritarian is high control, negativism, emphasis on failures. They always got to focus. Well, this we didn't do that right. We didn't do that right. I mean, please, we don't need to hear those things in organizations. We need to know what's happening and how we need to fix things going forward, or not necessarily telling us, but let us be involved in fixing those challenges that organizations are going through. And that's a lot what employees want. They want to be a person or persons that have some type of way of feeling like they matter, their contributions matter to the organization. Lack of reason or actions, core consequences. Those are supervisory styles. Now, reward systems, non-contingency, arbitrary reward allocations, low incentive values of rewards, movie tickets. That I remember when that was going on, many people said, "Are you for real? You gonna give me some movie tickets?" Well, some people may have wanted that in their pocket. So know who your staff is and how they look at things to understand what's going on. At our organization, we get these turkeys every year. I think that's the best reward because I like going to the store deciding what kind of turkey I may want. I don't just have to get a butterball turkey or any other turkey there. I get to choose what makes sense for me and my family in the turkey category. So I love that reward from the company. Low incentive values of rewards or lack of competency-based work. Lack of innovation-based rewards also. So we want to give rewards for innovation in the companies. Powerless. Now, what else? Job design. Lack of role clarity. That happens to a lot of companies, even though they'll have a job description there, but they're constantly telling people other things and leading them in ways that don't make sense. Lack of training and technical support. Unrealistic goals, guys. Lack of authority or authority discretion, low task variety, limited participation in programs, meetings, and decisions. And then that really have a direct impact on job performance. Lack of appropriate necessary resources is another one. What about lack of network forming opportunities? We can build that. I know in this COVID-19 situation or where we're having to stay distance and all of that from one another, but there are other things that we can really do if we give teams an opportunity. If your team is not participating in things, it may mean that there are challenges going on in the organization with communication or management that's not allowing, allowing a negative trickle-down effect. And so we need to squash those things and really perfect things and work on things that we need to kind of guide and work through. Low advancement opportunities is another. Too many rules and guidelines. Now, some organization, I worked in banking and finance for the longest, and investment management, there were Sarbanes-Oxley. There was tons of rules always there. And we had to abide by those rules. But at the same time, I don't need additional rules that, or the staff didn't need additional rules that were in place to comply by. We already had enough regulatory rules that we had to abide by, let alone organizational rules or banking rules that we had to abide by. So adding more rules just for the sake of adding rules is too much. Lack of meaningful and goal tasks. Now, some people will just go along with this. They're like, okay, all I have to do is put widget A into widget B, and then I move on to the next, A to B, A to B. Or I email some things every few minutes, or I look up some stuff, or I just pay this, I put the file in, upload it, pay. No. That doesn't lead to advancement of the organization or the individual. We need to work toward these things. Lack of meaningful goals and tasks will drive down the organization. Limited contact with senior management. We have too many levels sometimes in organizations. And if your shop is running right, you may not need as many of the managers that you think you have. And this is a reference she had from back then, but even to this day, I agree with this. Encouraging participative management. What are some of the concrete steps for moving power downward in organizations into the hands of teams? What are your thoughts? Well, let's talk about it. We have task delegation, parallel suggestion involvement, job involvement, and organizational involvement. So let's look at task delegation in a few minutes. We're going to look at that, and as we'll see in exhibit 310, 39, I skipped over 310, so I'm sorry about that. But I want you to look at 310 in your book, and you will see that outline there. So as we close this out, in bureaucratic organizations, we know that participative management may seem like an anti-management or an admission of failure at one's own job. However, remember that leaders may be concerned about becoming less influenced the more they encourage participative management. As with that said, a leader as a coordinator or integrator of talent is a better image for leadership. So, what are your thoughts? This was a great chapter, and I would love to hear your thoughts as we talk about this on Coffee and Community. Thank you again, and I appreciate this our time on this, and I'm looking so forward to our discussions as we talk about this chapter and how we see it. We're going to have a great conversation. I'm looking so forward to this.